This is Season 2, Episode 5 of Mastering the RPG, a tabletop RPG podcast all about upping your game. Doesn't matter if you're a game master or player, you'll find advice, ideas, and some strong opinions. Tonight's episode, Yapping about RPGs, or Where the Heck is James? Welcome to Mastering the RPG. Like I said, we're all about upping your game with advice, ideas, cool stuff, opinions, all sorts of cool stuff like that. I'm Carl with my hosts Eric and James, and you can find information about us at masteringtherpg.com. You can send us email, give us feedback, ask questions at gamemaster@masteringtherpg.com. I've got Eric with me tonight. I don't have James. James is a busy person, and he has so much stuff to do. And so instead of rocking a normal topic with advice and a whole bunch of other stuff, we thought we'd just yap about some stuff that we saw, that we know. But let's start off by saying hello, Eric.
Hello, Eric. Yeah, James is off on his epic solo quest. Yeah, he'll come back stronger and leveled up.
It's sure. Like a pilgrimage of work. He's got so much work. It's like a pilgrimage. He's so yeah. Hopefully he'll come back. He won't come back rested. I know that because he's got a lot that he's doing. But hopefully he'll come back excited to go through some of the topics. We've got a lot of topics on the plate, but we need his insight and we need his brain to make them as interesting as possible to everybody. So I was just bouncing around and talking about things, and I said I saw some games that were being released in 2023 or are coming up down the pipe a little bit, and I thought, what the heck, I would just bounce them off of Eric, see what he thought, see if maybe you guys don't know about them, and so it'll be something that you'll learn something about. The first one I wanted to talk about that I ran into was Free League is now making a Walking Dead RPG. That's right. The folks who seem to buy all of the franchise rights, or not franchise rights, but all of the rights to your favorite franchise.
Well, it's one of your favorites, right? I mean, Alien RPG, is that they did that?
They
right?
did Alien. They did.
Yeah. Mutant Year. I know Mutant Year Zero. Right, that was the first one.
That was the first one that had
that was the conception of the engine,
the Mutant Zero engine. But they also did Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, okay.
They're doing Walking Dead, and I think there's a few others. They definitely pick up on licensed material, and actually that might be, I don't know, that might be a negative, right? How The Walking Dead is a very specific flavor of post-apocalyptic, and maybe that'll just play. I have Alien. I have the Alien game, and it's really cool, and pretty neat, but it really does. It's all about Alien. It's not like a generic in-space horror game. You can use it for that, but
interesting.
It's not like the bestiary has the aliens that you're used to seeing, and it doesn't add anything more to that. It doesn't have a lot. I don't know, but
the core mechanics. I mean, the
mechanics are pretty good.
Easy to lay over. Okay.
Yeah, the mechanics
are nice. It does a good job of like amping up fear, right? That's a big part of the game.
Right. Their whole mechanic has that pushing the roll. So you have it's based on D6, 6-sided dice. With the 6 being a success. But if you fail, you can kind of push your luck by taking an Alien specifically, but Mutant, the Zero engines basically got this. You kind of push your roll, and you're rolling another D6. Or another set of D6s to add. But if you get a 1, and since they use special dice, often that would be like, another
different
color pip or whatever. But if you get a 1, then bad things happen. In an Alien, you happen to panic, and you go game over, man, crazy, basically. So but it's
so maybe in Walking Dead, then you get like attacked, or okay, sorry. Continue what you're saying. I have a couple thoughts on this.
No. Go ahead. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, I don't think there's not actually a ton of zombie games, and we'll talk about another one that's coming out soon. There's not actually like a ton of actual specific zombie games. There's one that's, I forget what it's called, but it's like something about it's like a longer sentence. Like we're gonna come for you. It's like there's older ones. Even Savage World doesn't have like a good straight actual
Well,
zombie.
they have Dead End,
Right.
which is a setting.
Oh,
They have the
okay,
Dead
yeah,
End setting, which
the
is
Dead End one.
a
Yeah, yeah,
Ace
yeah, yeah.
product. Yep.
Yeah, an Ace one, but not like a big official one. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like with Walking Dead. Well, first, like I was saying, so there's not a ton of zombie stuff out there. Walking Dead is a more specific type of zombie right game. Like I mean, it's really all about those human stories and all. I don't know. I'm kind of over Walking Dead. Maybe it's because the TV series like really burned me out on it. Um, so it's not like for me. It's not. I'm not that excited about the actual setting itself. Like I think there's more interesting zombie settings out there. Um, and like I feel like Walking Dead would have done better maybe with in the Apocalypse Engine one, and the kind of leaning in
Oh,
more
okay.
into like the kind of social side of Walking Dead. You know, more than
More
like
with a narrative engine kind of thing.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like I mean, the big thing with Apocalypse Engine games are they I mean, a lot of them they leverage like what are they strings or there's a lot of things I call them. I'm not all of them do, but a lot of them.
You mean
Uh,
moves and stuff
there's
like
the
that?
moves, but then like Monster Hearts does this, and I think a couple of other ones do it, where you can kind of leverage more of like like relationships. It's kind of set up to be easier to like really, it's a more tightly narrative and like to do with more of the relationship. I could see that more for Walking Dead than like just a straight horror experience, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
and I haven't seen like a preview of it or anything like that. I just
yeah,
happen to know the Mutant Zero engine a little bit, and it's interesting. But again, it's going to provide a specific kind of play experience. I'm guessing, and so it's the question I'm thinking is Free League kind of getting too many of these out. Should they get that engine and sort of take it and more genericize it and do things that aren't based on IP? But I don't know. They seem to be doing pretty well on what they're doing already.
yeah, and the
Another
Kickstarter. It
one that
seems
I
like
ran into.
The Kickstarter's this month too, so
Yeah,
it's
so it's
coming
coming
out
up.
soon. And yeah, let's look at the website. It's based on specifically they talk about the AMC version, so it's not even the graphic novel version. It's the AMC verse of that. So I don't know. Who knows if that makes a big difference, but I'm certainly burned out on the AMC version. But anyways, continue.
I didn't watch a lot of it, to be honest with you. So the other one, another one I ran into, and I had to talk to you about, Eric, about it
Yeah.
because it's Gloomhaven the RPG, and I guess that's kickstarting in April. But I've never played Gloomhaven, but it's famous, right? And so
Oh yeah.
that's why I pinged you on it and said, "Hey, it's an RPG, and it's supposed to use some of the mechanics from the game, and some of
Yeah.
that flavor." So I don't know. What do you think about that, having a Gloomhaven RPG? How's that make you
I
feel?
am so just a quick history here. I actually kickstarted Gloomhaven. I was a very early back. I was like one of the earliest backers of Gloomhaven. So I had the special stuff. I had all the things, all the bells and whistles, and I played it early. So yeah, I love Gloomhaven. I love the world. It's it's a really cool world. I mean, it's pretty much what you think of as fantasy, but there's a lot of its own kind of twists and unique things. But I really love the character classes, and the flavor and the mechanics of the character classes are awesome. So that makes me really excited. Like I am 100% going to back this. I am curious though, because the things I had read about it is that it is based on using cards, and they're expanding the cards to have like an out of like those. I think it'll be the two normal. There's going to be like each card will have the two normal kind of actions that the game does. Where quickly the game has for your character, you have a deck of cards per kind of class, and each card is split into two halves. And normally one is like a movement or utility ability, and one is more of like a spell or like an attack. But they mix those up, and then there's generic actions, like the top's always an attack and the bottom's always a movement. And so the whole mechanic of that is that you pull two cards out for your turn, and you have to play the top half of one card and the bottom half of the other card. So and also the cards themselves are initiative. So there's an interesting mechanic there. I'm very curious how they're going to translate into a tabletop RPG and having cards, especially if this is going to be compatible with like Foundry, because I mean, well, maybe it's not as intense as it was during the pandemic. I still think like, I mean, I don't know what you think, Carl, but I think it's like it has to be over 80% of people playing tabletop games now are digitally or online. right? So
Considering the hobby grew so fast in the
yeah,
last few years, I have a feeling a lot of people, that's just how they started playing, was
yeah,
playing online and not even having a local group that they started with.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
online gaming is a force to be reckoned with for sure, and it's not something that a game can forget about if it wants to be successful, I think. You
Yeah,
know,
so I hope they have something. I mean, they would have to put a lot of work into, actually making the stuff for Foundry or what Roll20 or whatever. But yeah, so the cards that I think they're putting a third option on these cards to have like out of combat stuff. So yeah, I'm very curious about this one. I mean, it's really intriguing. I'm going to kickstart it just because I love the world and they're good game designers. And
or
I think it'll be. I mean, yeah, it'll be
make
really
sure you ping
popular. I
me.
think.
Make sure you
Yeah,
ping
I
me when
will
that one comes out.
absolutely.
So for
Yeah.
sure, I haven't played, but I've heard a lot of good stuff about it, and I like to have a little bit different games on the bookshelf just in case. So, um, their conventions always interesting to try different games at conventions
Hey,
and use different mechanics
absolutely.
with people. So,
Yeah.
um, so I had another thing. I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but there's another thing going on. A game called Shadow Dark, which has got just this immense amount of buzz. I don't know. All I know about it is what I've seen on
I know
YouTube
nothing
videos,
about
and
it.
it seems like every YouTuber who's got an RPG channel did something on Shadow Dark, to the point where somebody on Twitter um, was complaining that did they pay all these people? It was like,
It's possible. It's definitely
yeah, you don't
possible.
know. It could have happened, but the point of this one is it's supposed to have an OSR feel, but includes some kind of 5e mechanics in it, like some more modern mechanics, even though it's got
Hmm.
an OSR feel. For example, it only has stats. So it's got a roll under mechanic. So there's not a bunch of skills and
Okay.
stuff like that. You have your basic dexterity, intelligence, strength, and you're rolling underneath those to do skill checks, which is very AD&D, old school
Yeah.
kind of gaming. But then it's got, I think, advantage and disadvantage concepts and a few things like that that also go into it. I was pretty psyched about it. I thought that'd be kind of cool. But then it said it's going to be printed in digest format. And I was like, oh my God, okay, never mind. I don't think I want a 300-page digest format book. That's kind of small, and but it's got a lot of buzz, and it's Kickstarter's going on right now. So maybe that's something people would be interested in. I don't know, Eric, you're not an OSR kind of person, so I know that probably wouldn't be
No,
your
I mean,
jam by any
yeah, I
means.
mean, I
So
actually have heard. Now I looked at it and like I have heard about. I read about this before. Yeah, I'm not. It's a little too OSR for me. I mean, rolling 3d6 in order, like no, absolutely not. Like that's
well, and
I just couldn't do it.
the price point too. I think it's $30 for the PDF only, and it's like, I'm more of a $15-20 PDF maybe.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
book you can charge me $60 for. That's fine, but I think the PDF should be a little cheaper personally. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Now,
Yeah, it's like they're trying to basically ride the 5e train to kind of get 5e people into OSR is almost like a gateway system into OSR. But honestly, it just looks to me like it's just an OSR. So I don't really see how it's really that different from any other OSR system. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but
I think I'm missing something too. It's just I don't know why it's got so much buzz. It's like I like all the
got some
channels
cool
I
art.
watch.
It's
Suddenly
got
there's
some
like
cool art.
very black and white and kind of again that old schooly look, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I had another one that I ran into that I thought was a lot of people get totally psyched about it. I'm sure. Matt Mercer is working on his own RPG now. Um, Kind of hush hush. I just heard it's not like coming
Yeah,
out
we've been hearing
Kickstarter.
inklings about it.
Yeah, little
Yeah,
inklings.
especially with the whole OGL debacle, and people were saying, "Is he going to split off?" And they were so quiet on it that there was a lot of like buzz about it, possibly.
Yeah, and it's called Syndicult. It's kind of a magical. It's got a lot of magic in the system. I think it's the settings based on like competing organized crime systems or something, or organized
Yeah,
groups like that. But there's a significant amount of magic. Very much not a lot about it. It's just that it's being worked on, and so
from their publishing company, their new publishing
Yeah,
company.
their new publishing company. And, considering how big Critical Role is, I can't believe that thing is not going to be, even if it's the worst designed game of all time, that it's not going to be a smashing hit. And we'll see.
I mean, definitely will ride the wave of their popularity, but this is not going to be the system that replaces. I mean, everybody's waiting for is like, where's the fantasy system that will be replacing D&D? Because I think most people agree that they're gonna want to go to their own system instead of staying on with 5e, for the actual game, for the actual stream games.
Yeah.
So this is not going to be that replacement. I think this is them having like a more modest kind of approach to their first published product. Not something too big, getting like the ball rolling, get like people to see what they can produce and everything.
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
That's what my read is, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are going to expect a lot more than that, but that's
I think they are. I think they are, but
so.
I think they're going to be. Yeah, that's just at least my impression of what I've seen. Like you said, it's been very little actual information out there, but yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not a big. Don't throw apples or throw tomatoes at me, but I'm not a big Critical Role fan. I don't really watch it, so I thought that would be something interesting. A lot of people who do watch it and enjoy it, and he's a very creative guy, and so his setting he came up with and everything. So I'm sure the setting that goes along with it's going to be fantastic. We'll just see how the mechanics are, whether they feel more D&D, they feel more something else, or what they look like. So.
I mean, I like Critical Role. I'm not, I can't watch that many streamed games, but I love I've watched some of them, and I love the animate, and I love the show on Amazon. I love the Amazon show. I kickstarted the show actually too.
Oh no, that I love.
I kickstarted it. I would say though, I bought his products, and I will say that the Gunslinger and the Witch, I forget what it's called, the other class he made. I didn't ever think they were they were good, but they were either too strong. Like one was really strong and one was kind of underpowered. So I didn't really think they had the best mechanical balance as far as classes go. But they're also working within, it was custom designed pretty quickly for a character of his, and then for Vin Diesel, I think originally. So yeah, so I'm kind of at a wait and see. Yeah, don't throw tomatoes. But we'll see.
Let me make it perfectly clear. The Legends of
Vox Machina.
Vox Machina is one of my favorite shows. So let me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So now I thought that was pretty cool. And then of course everybody knows about Project Black Flag, right?
Oh yeah.
That the important
this one was really they came out with their playtest, and I think I talked about this with you. I haven't had a chance to talk about it with James, because me and James really will get into this stuff, especially with D&D. But they really rushed their first playtest.
Oh yeah,
it was it was worse than D&D 1's playtest, which I also thought was not enough. When you compare it to Pathfinder straight up here's the core rule book, right? And then they'll have their other playtests will come out. They'll be here's some new rules and 2 full classes. The problem with Project Black Flag and that, it was so limited in its scope that there's really no way for us to playtest anything in it, because you can't see okay, well, this seems okay, but are you going to change this part of the class? Are you going to change this part of the other rule system? There's not enough. Kind of the words are escaping me. There's not enough. There's not enough meat there, and there's not enough there's nothing to compare. We need other stuff to see. Okay, so this is what you're doing with these type of class features. So now these having feats at this level, there's just not enough there to actually playtest anything, right? You can kind of sub that in with the 5e rules, but that's not what they're doing. So I think they made a huge mistake, letting out they should hold back way more stuff before releasing any playtests. Well, and it kind of seems like they're not doing that. They're just releasing this piecemeal.
Well, obviously, playtest 1. Well, maybe it's obvious to me, or how I feel about it. That was rushed out because of the OGL debacle, and
maybe
they said, we're gonna do our own thing," and people are going, "Okay, where's your own thing?" And so the first playtest really wasn't a playtest; it was kind of more like an introduction, right? I mean, it had a lot of background information.
I always would describe it as someone giving me a synopsis, or somebody somebody writing out a movie trailer that they saw, like somebody being like, "Oh, here I'm going to write out this what I saw." Like it's not even a movie trailer. It was like somebody describing a movie trailer to me. You know, that's what it felt like. It was like there's not enough depth here, and then basically it seemed okay. So you're doing 1D, yeah. There's just not enough here. Again, I really like Cobalt Press. James absolutely loves Cobalt Press. He uses Cobalt Press for all his stuff, but they're mechanically. I'm just going to say this again. I have a lot of their things. Mechanically, their stuff's either like really underpowered or really overpowered. Like a lot of their like classes and their like subclasses and some of their spells. So their stuff ranges all over the place. But I love their like lore. I love their creature designs. I have their bestiary and everything. So yeah, this one I'm definitely excited about it because I want a better 5e. I like having like a simpler system like 5e, especially to introduce new people into the hobby. But I have a lot of problems with 5e that I've had for years, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully it's not just a clone with some minor reskinning so that they can not, not
So they can
violate
keep
the
the products
one
around.
D&D. Yeah. But
And that is a problem, I think, because like both 1D&D and them, I mean, like I don't think 1DD is going to be compatible. And I kind of doubt this is going to be compatible, but like 5e needs a bigger overhaul than just a point. It needs like a 0.75. It needs like, personally, that's what I think. It needs a much bigger overhaul than just let's keep everything compatible. And I understand why they would do that, but to be the system that I think everybody wants, I don't think that's going to be that's going to go far enough, you know?
Yeah, I think there's going to be. I don't think they're going to push the envelope personally.
Yeah.
But the playtest number 2 is coming this month, so it's supposed to be.
All right.
This month, so we'll see what they added into the playtest too. I'm sure every one of my YouTubers that I watch will have something on it, so I'll get multiple, and then hopefully I'll get a chance to read it myself. So I don't play a lot of D&D 5e, so I'll look at it and go, "Well, this is interesting." But Eric, you'd say, "Oh, this is just like D&D," and it's stuff like that. So, and so the last thing is, I think, kind of more in the Pathfinder vein, right, Eric? You ran into something really interesting.
This one came out of nowhere. The reason I'm even bringing this up because I'm so perplexed by it. It's called Hope Finder. It's Jason Bowman's, who's the kind of I forget his actual position, but he's the head designer at Paizo for Pathfinder 2e, and I think they call it like a post-apocalyptic zombie hack of Pathfinder 2e. So it's utterly bizarre to me. Again, there's not a ton of zombie stuff out there. But this is them using, this is supposed to be, it's on Kickstarter right now. This is supposed to be a narrative game, a narrative zombie game that uses Pathfinder 2e mechanics. Stripped down mechanics, obviously. Like I know Yulin can go up to level 5. I think it's classless. To me, it's just weird. It's like, when I think of narrative, like I love Pathfinder 2e. I've gotten a lot of people into it from 5e. I've rescued a lot of 5e players and brought them over to the 2e way before the OGL thing was going on. So, I love 2e, but when I think of narrative, I don't think of Pathfinder 2e.
No, I don't think of Pathfinder at all.
It's not the crunchiest game, but it's certainly not a narrative game. So, I'm just perplexed by like why, if you were going to make a narrative zombie game, I mean, I guess a lot of the math is there. I don't know. I mean, like you don't need all those math and mechanics to make a narrative game. So it does look like it's doing some cool. I'm on the fence about backing it. I might still. It does a lot of stuff like you have a lot of. There's still feats and there's skills and there's backgrounds, all that stuff. There's like a flashback mechanic that I think is a big part of the game. Something that we might, in Savage Worlds, we might think of like as interludes almost, I think. So I think that's going to be a big part of the narrative part of the game, at least, is like there's all these different types of flashbacks and you talk about like maybe your origin of when you were there, like when the zombie apocalypse happened. I'm not really sure of all the details, but I know that's a big part of it. So I'm just completely perplexed by it, if anything.
Well, I mean, especially, Pathfinder, you're playing heroes, right? In a zombie apocalypse game, you should be playing more endangered people. You're not really heroes. So how does that all work out? It's just fascinating that's such a thing. It like harkens back to the D20 days where there was D20 apocalypse games and they had to kind of shoehorn them into the 3.0 rules because of that's what the original OGL was back in the D20 like D&D 3.0 days. So it'll be interesting whether that's a shoehorn or whether they just find some really unique space to play in. That's
Yeah,
fascinating. So that's cool.
and that's what I might. I mean, it's pretty cheap, so I might just back. I might just back it just because of curiosity. Honestly, I'm not like I don't have a big need to play in a zombie game, anyways. And if I did, I could. You know, Savage Worlds is so
Savage
like we
Worlds,
played a zombie
yeah.
game. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so easy to play with Savage Worlds. So I might just get it purely to sate my curiosity.
To support
But yeah, that's
the game
Kickstarter's
designer
on
you
now.
like.
So if you want to, you should look at it now if you're curious. I think it has a week to go. So yeah.
Oh, okay. When this drops, you may have missed the window, but we'll see. We record these about a week in advance, so
Yeah.
And so those were kind of some of the cool game things that I ran into as I was looking at what's coming up, and just looking at where I'm going to spend my cash. That's not on Savage World stuff, and they're just kind of interesting. But I had another thing I was thinking about, since we're just, again, the title is Yapping about RPGs, is kind of like what kind of current games and toughness and or struggles are we having? I have personal struggles right now. I'm Carl, and I'm having personal struggles with my own RPG game, and Eric's in it, so he'll be metagaming a little bit, but I'm doing this sci-fi game. It's kind of a planet hopper, but it's based on the technology that the group is using to planet hop is advanced, and they don't really understand it because it was found technology, in a sense, and it's based on a previous. I think we mentioned it in previous episodes, but it's based on, there was a time, super advanced technology. It fell. The player characters, their society grew up in the ashes, and they found some of this technology. One of them they found was a ship. So they're planet hopping. And because of the background, so it's not like Traveler. Where Traveler, you're planet hopping, and you're going and you're saying, oh, you're going to this planet, and, we're interacting with stuff on that planet, and it makes sense. This I'm having a hard time. Like, I'm trying to get you guys engaged.
I think let me chop it, because I think this is something that's interesting. I think when we were coming, at least my impression, and I think maybe some of us were coming into it, it was going to be obviously really there was going to be a lot of weirdness with it and like mystery to it, because it was like, this is the campaign that we played like 3 campaigns ago, and then we're like we have this world that we've all kind of worked on together and updated it. I think maybe we thought that we were getting into. It would be like a lot of exploration, and then like maybe there would be factions, and it'd be like a Traveler game, and that we thought. And actually, it's really interesting. Now it's like basically just a straight mystery. Like it's all of it's one big mystery. It's not like we're dealing with individual things. The entire thing is one big mystery, right? And that's the thing that I think none of us expected. Definitely, I didn't expect it. Right? I don't think. Yeah. I don't know if the other players did, but I don't think.
Yeah, it most definitely was not going to be it most definitely was not going to be a Traveler game. There is something going on that you guys are learning about. It is a mystery. It's just like the original campaign. You guys were discovering that the world was not the world you thought of, and there's this technology, and there's this ancient peoples, and you discovered killer robots you've never seen before, and you had to learn about them. And it's the same thing. There's a fundamental mystery at hand that you guys are kind of getting thrown in the middle of, and you're peeling the onion back. But I'm trying to understand whether that's really engaging everybody, because there's still planet. You still got to go to the planet and do stuff in order to peel the onion. And I sometimes feel like you guys get to the planet and it's like, oh, we'll collect some stuff and then we might as well just leave. And it's like, well, you've kind of missed the point of the planet or what's going on the planet, So it's different. It's not a Traveler game. Is that a good thing, or is there something missing to get? One of the players, he's totally into it. It feels, and he's normally not into the games because his character seems to be the one who's doing stuff now because he's the intelligence officer.
The last planet,
and
because like. Well, it was that part because he hasn't had a lot of chance to do a lot of stuff, because he's like the intelligence officer. But then also he's like human, and the only other human on board is an NPC. Like the rest of us
Yeah.
are all weird anthropomorphic animal people. So we like just straight up couldn't leave. Like my character, who has basically the illusionist arcane background that we from Fantasy Companion. But it's all technology. It's basically, I call it my super virtual. My character calls it a super virtual tabletop power armband. But it's it's a really advanced really advanced machine for like LARPing. From like, if you think about LARPing in like 500 years, and be like a portable holographic projector. So that's how we've like done the trappings of it. And I haven't taken disguise, which I was like, God damn! Like I was just kicking myself because like if I had the disguise power. Right? Like we could have done a lot more stuff. So that was a big issue there. I mean, he's been on this. Now, the rest of it is, I feel like it's been mostly on my character because I am the scientist and we have two big mysteries going on. And like some of it, it's been hard because it's like Eric thinks he knows a lot of stuff that's going on. I'm trying to keep it with my character would know, but it's also important that my character kind of gets these things because that's kind of moving the story forward, right? So, because we have like, one of the mysteries is like, how does our faster than light drive function? And my character's been kind of figuring that out, or trying to at least, with theories. And the other one is like, well, what's going on with these basically Star Trekian seeded planets? And like each planet that we're going to, we're finding that like, the animals and the people are genetically identical to other people's, but like we've been, this has been like since the singularity happened. It's been like thousands of years, and then there's
like
some other.
5,000 years ago.
We found new anthropomorphic animals that are not like us, but they're similar enough. So there's a lot of like weird stuff going on. I think maybe we thought originally that there'd be a big mystery, but it would still have like, we might have like more individual quests on the planet,
Well, and that's what I'm trying to. That's I guess you're hitting the meat, right? You're hitting the meat of the thing, right? Like this last planet, this interaction between the factions, you could have got plugged into, right? But
yes, we could.
Didn't really happen.
No.
So that's something I have to work on. I'm trying to think. Maybe I made it too mysterious, and now it's hard to get you guys to engage.
With that specific planet, it was like we had no personal stake in anything, right? And like because he was the only one out there, and when it was like there's this super complicated. It was the most advanced planet we've been to with like all these politics. We had no idea about anything. We just had snippets. So it was this like we like, do we want to get involved in this like planet-wide political war that we just have no concept of? And I think that's why we were pretty like, let's just play it safe. We don't want to get bogged down with like a World War II that we have no personal stake in, basically.
Well, it feels like you guys are much more interested in more of the planets that, like the first planet, where it's like a complete something happened and nothing is around, and now you can explore and find stuff. It's I don't know. I'm trying to understand. Because with an advanced planet, it's going to be advanced. There's going to be, there's not guys running around with sticks. Because another planet you guys went to,
sure.
They're they were running around in the Stone Age. And so you came in and kind of helped them become better.
We got involved with them too.
Because the Prime Directive does not exist. And it's okay.
We're allowed.
There's no Prime Directive. Go ahead.
There's no Prime Directive. I think with them, if it was maybe like, if we saw like, oh, here's somebody being like, if there was people near us who were being like oppressed, and we were like, okay, we can either see these people getting like slaughtered, like if there was a more impetus in specific, because the other two planets were great, and we really had a personal stake, especially in that second planet, to help those tribal people out. But like, that was a pretty quick solve. Like we defeated that one group, and then we didn't really have anything else to do there. I think with the third planet, if we had seen, because like it was like we were being hunted, and then we were like, oh, we need to like stay under the radar, basically. If there was another monetist thing, but if we were like more, oh, okay, we need to like step in, like morally, it's like morally we need to step in, or we rescue somebody and then they're like, oh, you have to give them back to us. You know what I mean? If there was something like, if there was I think draw like that, because the way we set up our characters were to be these kind of explorers that were very, I don't know if England and Spain to the New World, but pretty much, right? sort of like that.
So
I
you
mean,
guys
we
didn't
don't.
expect you'd run into like advanced civilizations.
But I think maybe we did, maybe like another spacefaring civilization or something. But it was just like it was so much. It was almost like overwhelming that we were like we ourselves couldn't, like, I don't think we thought because like while we have this ship, we don't have like laser guns and personal shields. So us getting involved in this war, like I don't think we thought we even talked about it beyond like launching an asteroid from space and being war criminals at like a city. Like I don't see how we could have really like shifted the war in any way. Unless like we assassinated a leader or something, but it's not like like we have some, because like what we trap as like the fantasy, the arcane backgrounds, those are like advanced technology and stuff, right? So we have a little bit of an edge over them, but they pretty much have the same weapons grade technology that we do, I believe, right? So I think there was nothing where like we didn't really think we could do anything. I think that's at least what I thought. Like there was nothing that we could really do. Yeah.
And so that was the struggle there. So there was definitely stuff you guys could have done.
Really?
Oh yeah, sure.
Because I didn't think you had that. I thought it was like, oh yeah, I knew that there must be something more, but I was like, I don't see how. I was scared. Like I was like, I don't know how we actually get involved in this without like potentially getting killed. I mean, right? I don't know. Like, what was the hook? What was like one of the hooks there that we missed?
Well, it's not really missed. I mean, you were there. Okay. It was just a matter of engaging more with if you would engage a little bit more with this group, this political thing that's going on. The war wasn't inevitable, right? It just kind of had to happen to kind of move things along, right? If you guys would have been, and what was on this planet is you had a chance to discover another civilization and understand how they grew up from where they came from. And because, like you said, the humans are biologically the same as far as you guys can tell.
Yes.
Right? Your tests show that these humans are genetically the same on this planet. You're still trying to figure out why that is, and you haven't yet done any. So what's the
societal
sociology kind of things, like how these societies created and where they came from? It's been more that snapshot in time. You get a feel for it, right? The planet where everybody was running around with spears, there were skyscrapers that were in disarray. So I think you guys kind of went, oh, something like our planet happened, bad things happen, and these are the people who are left over from that. But learning some of these society and where they came from and their history may help in your quest.
Here's what I'll say to this, and I think this is actually a good point for the podcast, in that when we were making the characters, like I made my character specifically, his focus was on biology, but he's also just a scientist. So he's also, because he had to be like a broad range of things. But we literally had no character be the anthropologist. And I think in like looking back at it now, hindsight's 2020, right? Like you could have been like, one of you needs to be the anthropologist. Because like you see with my character will not, he's curious, but he's mostly curious. Like you see my character is extreme. Like I've gotten into a lot of trouble being curious, but that's me being like, I'm going to investigate this like hole, and then I got attacked by a giant snake creature. Like, so I think my character's doing the job of like, I'm taking the time to catalog all this stuff from the biological point of view and geological and all those things. But we have no other character that is an anthropologist. I think if we did have a character who was an anthropologist, then they'd be like, okay, we need to then like disseminate this culture more. I think Sean was talking about, he was originally kind of talking about doing that, but then he shifted to a spy, because nobody has academics.
Yeah, and I thought he did when he first made his character up, and then he pulled the plug on that one. So
I think this is the thing when you're making the game, and this is again not really to your fault, but I think in retrospect I can look back on it now that maybe it should have been like, you should have been like, okay, we need somebody who's a scientist, like a hard scientist, and we need somebody who's like an anthropologist, because if that, like, you know what I mean? Because if that stuff's going to be really important, then you definitely need somebody whose character who's like built that way, so they'll focus on that, because we don't have anybody who's focused on that at all.
Well, and if you would have had somebody who was an anthropologist, I guess they would have felt the need, like to as part of their character to push that. Nothing says you can't go and look at the history of these people or whatever, right? Nothing stopped you from doing that.
No, nothing's
It's
stopping
just
us.
a
No.
character, somebody whose character had that skill would want to use that skill and
Yeah.
would kind of push you guys. That makes complete sense. And
And that was like their
I thought
role
we
too,
had
right?
one, but my fault for not obviously checking.
Yeah,
that
that's what I'm
existed.
saying. So I think
Yeah.
that's what I say. I don't think it was your fault. I think you thought that we did, and then in retrospect, like when it came out, it was like, I think maybe if it was like more clear that we absolutely needed one, then that would have been. Because I think when I was helping Sean, he just didn't want to do it, and I was like, okay, like I'm not going to convince him to do it or not, but yeah, because even like I don't even have a D4 in it, so I don't know who would even disseminate most of the information. If we did have it, for sure. So maybe that's something to bring up with. I think here we bring up with the group. Maybe be like, does somebody next advance if somebody could take a D4 in academics or something like that? I don't know. If that's a solution or not. Because I don't want it to just all be barren planets either. I like that there was like a civilization. It was just like, I think also because, like I said, I didn't have the disguise power. They were like, I wanted to like parachute down into the city, and they're like, no, you're a mouse. They're going to see you. I was like, what if I wear a robe? They're like, no, they wouldn't let me do it. So
well, that's
I couldn't get involved even if I wanted to. I was like on a leash.
And I said there were other creatures, like there
Yeah.
was dinosaur creatures to go along with the humans. I was hoping there was a little hint that maybe
the
you
dog
guys,
people could have mixed in.
yeah, it wouldn't have been that great of a thing. But interesting.
Well, there's new planets now, so I would say we definitely should have more civilization type 1, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to, I'm having fun, like I said, it's a big mystery. For me personally, I feel like maybe the last session too, I was taking up too much time because it's like, I feel like so much of it's my character's shoulders to figure out some of the actual like mechanical mysteries of like the drive and of like the biological mystery, right? Which I
you seem
think I'm hitting on, but
you seem to be the most out of character, the most engaged with the mysteries. I think a couple of folks are just, they want to roll their dice and have their opportunity to do their thing, so like our pilot, it's, I want to fly the ship, so give me a reason to fly the ship, or shoot at something, right? So and that's fine, because that's perfectly fine, that's the fun, right? But it's and I want everybody to kind of enjoy their character doing their character's things.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. All right. Well, it sounds like we might need to get somebody who has a little more impetus to kind of push that agenda a little bit more. I think I gotta make the engaging with the natives a little more engaging, a little more desirable.
Or even forced. You could even like there could be those where you set up those dilemmas of like, okay, we're gonna watch a bunch of like school children get slaughtered or something. I don't know. Like I mean that's a pretty like overt way, but I mean we were engaged with we were pretty engaged with the second planet. So yeah.
All right.
But this is a good time maybe to like talk about we've talked about it in the podcast before, and you've done it before. We're like, bring it up to the group, and be like, hey, is anybody else feeling this, or maybe somebody, I don't know. Yeah. So
the stars and wishes, as James would say.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so we still got a little bit of time. Any other things you wanted to just rap about or put a couple minutes in on, or?
I think I was talking about this a little bit before, but I'm working on my own fantasy setting right now, which has been an interesting experience, drawing from a lot of other settings that I've dabbled with before. Because for me personally, like I want to run some fantasy games. For me, I use Savage Worlds to run games. I've DM'd 5e and Pathfinder and some other systems, but Savage Worlds to me is just like the way my brain works. It's the easiest way to DM games. And I like using my own settings because I don't like have to, like we've talked about it too, where I don't like to be like, well, let me actually read back on the lore of this. Like I want to be able to like make up stuff and be like, oh yeah, that's the lore.
I'm such a homebrew guy too.
That's the lore. So this has been an interesting experience of building it out, and I'm going through and I'm building out, I've been working on how I approach, we might even do an episode on this of building your own setting, but how I do it pretty organically. Like I get inspiration with this one, I actually started with the ancestries. and then like from there, like okay, and then I, you know, in the ancestry sections I talk about where they came from, and that kind of gave me, oh, okay, so this is how this part of the world functions. This is how this part of the world functions. Like when I have a limited ancestries, and I was like, okay, I want humans to be the only native species to this planet. And then when I was thinking about no, I wanted gnomes in here because I just think they're funny. Um, and I was like, oh, I have gnomes. They're coming from like the outer astral. They're coming from like out of this universe, and their arrival either caused or they're victims of this kind of cataclysmic world storm, a magic storm that destroyed the modern society that the planet was on. And so like, oh, like, oh, that's cool. So I have them be like, I wanted the gnomes to be weird, so they came from outer space, and that led to like, oh, that's what this like you know, kind of like with you in the singularity event. So it's been really interesting, kind of. Well, I've written settings before, really fleshing out a big fantasy setting here, but I'm keeping it into a. I didn't want it to have like the expansiveness of a normal fantasy setting, so this setting specifically is going to be on this isolated kind of super island, like kind of like an Australia. James will like that, but kind of like an Australia or like Australia, New Zealand, you know, Tasmania, like that kind of size. But have it be filled with wilderness and have it be completely isolated. So there's like over 150 years of people, or like 100 years of people colonizing it, and then there was a big push because of a disease, an outbreak of a disease, and then these basically it's really dangerous to travel through because of giant sea monsters and this, I forget what I called it, but like a mist veil, like this mist that's almost, that when it's thick, it's solid, so sailors can't even like sail through it basically. And there was a way of going through like kind of the more shallow, more the lighter kind of like passageways that you could navigate through. But now that's shut off. So my idea for this setting was like I wanted to have that fantasy setting, and I wanted to have different cultures. But you know, it's only been like 100 years of them colonizing this island, and there's a lot of different countries from the old world. So you'll have mysteries, you'll have like a bunch of different countries, but it won't be that same expansiveness of, say, like a normal fantasy world, right, where they could like go anywhere. Kind of, they're kind of stuck, and a lot of it's going to be like crazy wilderness too, and like mysteries, that kind of thing. So it's kind of yeah.
So how big are you thinking this? You said Australia, but Australia is big, right? And it takes,
Yeah.
you know, a days, weeks to travel across that, even by car. So
That's it's kind of an Australian size place.
Okay. So there's a lot you can do there, even though it's smaller in size.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of it's, there's going to be some interesting countries, but there's going to be like some city states basically, and there's going to be a lot of wilderness. So that's like, you know, and the elves are like, there's elves around the world, but they're in very isolated pockets of nature, and they acclimate to each part of nature that they're in, and they're going to be there. And then this is actually the first place that they've have really formal relations with like the other species, the other ancestries. So there's a lot of like unique things here. Like the half elves are only found on this island because they've struck an accord with the elven clans. And there's other races like free golems, which are sentient golems that only happens on this island because traveling through the mists veil, whatever I want to call it, kind of can awaken these golems, which are been servants for, especially this. I have one of the main kingdoms of the old world being this like huge kind of desert kingdom, mainly gnomes and humans, but mainly gnomes, that are kind of all about alchemy and science, but they're also mercantile-ish, and that's kind of how their society is structured, is that they're the kind of more the powerful trade families and scientists kind of rule it, kind of like a, what is that, an oligarchy, or
yeah,
I forget what it's called, but and they're all about like, you know, their alchemical and magic combinations, and they're all about levitation. So they have like giant, like in this desert, which is kind of like an Egyptian like floodplains desert, there's like giant floating cities or palaces. Like if somebody's really rich, they might have a floating palace. So that's the culture that there's a city state of that they basically use like a terraforming device to kind of make a city. So there's only like, it's not like the same as spanning as an empire, but they're all about golems, and then golems are here now, they're sentient. So I'm trying to pick little like, you know, twist on kind of normal fantasy races. And I think whenever you're designing a fantasy thing, if I ever did even professional products, I think it's good to, you can make twists on fantasy creatures, but always keep it as like an elf and elf, because there's so much art out there for elves. Like I think when we were working on our science fiction thing, it was like, you know, you can make a weird alien, but for me, like when I think about making too weird of an alien, there's not art out there for people to use in tabletop games. So that's what I always think about in making ancestries. Like you can really make weird ancestries, but you should always kind of often make it where it's something that people could still use art for. Because to me, that's really important is character art. Maybe with AI generation, we'll have less of a need for that, but I don't know. I mean, if the alien's not out there, then the AI can't generate it either, right? So
right, that's true. That's true. Well, I guess, you know, if you're making this as a setting that you end up selling, then you'll have to pay for some artwork anyway. But that still doesn't help when somebody's making a character. Otherwise, they'll have the same thing that looks the same all the time because that's the only art they have anyway. So that makes sense. It's interesting that you're thinking ahead for how people would use it. That's kind of cool, honestly. So.
Yeah, I always think about that with. I mean, you know, we've dabbled in a couple settings. This one I'm mainly doing for myself. We'll see if I think it's cool enough that has any legs, I might do it as a swag product. I said I'm doing like, you know, I'm gonna have its own bestiary. Not like a lot, but its own specific things of a lot of the cosmology is based on the dreaming again, which is separate from the Aboriginal of Australia. I didn't even know that when I first came up with the idea, but it's yeah. So I have my own cosmology. I have my own. You know, I am really writing this out to be not super deep, but like wide. You know what I mean? Not like tall but wide, I guess.
Well, you need enough to have the ability to generate adventures within the setting. You don't want it to be so prescriptive that there's nothing to do, there's nothing to explore because everything's given in depth. But you also want to make sure that there's enough there that people can latch onto and build something around it, which is, you know, the point of a third-party setting, you know, again, like you said, if it would be a swag, is to get those ideas and be able to leverage it. I think some of the products Pinnacle puts out, like Deadlands Lost Colony, they get a little too depth. And you know, it's like you don't want to go quite that deep because then it takes away some of the game master or player or whoever their own freedom of expression because something's already completely defined for them. But anyway,
and that's exactly in this one. I'm thinking when I think of ahead, I think of well, you could use this on a different part of the country that's also or the continent or the world. The way the whole cosmology is set up is that I've been talking about it already with like gods. Like here's the main kind of religions of the things that are represented here, but you can have any type of like it's all about kind of group consciousness and dreaming. So the gods themselves were created like this dream event happened, and there's a dream sphere. And there's like a prime sphere, which is the material plane, basically. But like when enough people believe in something, you know, and this is not a new concept, but enough people believe in something, they create this thing. So gods are kind of created from, so like people influence the dreaming, and then the dreaming itself influences people in turn. So the gods themselves are kind of creations from group consciousness and ideals of people have. So I'm leaving it open when I start running games in this, is that players can be like, oh, I have my own god. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And like some of the old world, like I have one part that's just called the 100 Kingdoms, which I make a joke like it's actually like 86 kingdoms, but it's always changing and there's things. So like I'm not going to define all those kingdoms. Like you can make your own. Hey, if you're from this other kingdom or you know your family was, then make that up. And they have this own religion, this own culture. So I'm like enough framework there, but then also like you leave it open for people to do their own stuff because we've talked about this before. Like leverage players, like leverage them doing some of the work for you. Yep. So yeah, I'm really trying not to overly define a lot of these things and keep it open for people to do their own thing.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's exciting. I still have my old setting that I laid out and put everything together like I could sell it. And then I never really had any art. So it's just sitting on the hard drive waiting. One day it might become a swag product. Well, it has art. And it's all public domain art, but it's like, yeah, it's kind of a cop out, but really need like real art. So anyway, cool. Very awesome. So yeah, I think that's some good topics. Hopefully the games were interesting to folks and my struggles. And again, if you had ideas we'd love to share them with everyone. So that's Game Master at masteringtherpg.com. And you could say, Carl, you should be doing this, or here's my ideas on it. We'd love to hear it. It's not like YouTube where you can just throw something in the comments. You got to send me an email. So, so anyway, hey, thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you got something out of it. Like I said, drop us a line, an email to GameMaster at masteringtherpg.com if you got a question, looking for some advice, or you'd like Eric to adjudicate some differences of opinion within your gaming group. We know he'd love to do that. No one's asked yet, but I think someone should. And and if you like the show, hey, give us some positive reviews wherever you get your podcast from. And we'd love to keep doing the show. So go ahead and check us out at masteringtherpg.com. Support us, email, all that good stuff, like I said. So this is Carl with Eric and not James tonight saying goodbye. And hey, so say goodbye, guys.
Happy gaming, and I'm not going to do an Australian accent. Good day, folks. Okay, that's about as much as I'll do. Yeah, James hates me already.
James, if you're listening to the end of this, well, I'll thank you for listening to it. So, all right, we'll catch you later. Thanks, everyone.
All right.